Hello, everyone, and Kuzazambo. Welcome to the podcast Beyond the Headlines Media Revolutionaries, brought to you by the Frederick Newman Foundation. And I am your host, Regita Guru. And in this very special episode, we have two very distinguished media professionals with us, Dr. Amrita Cheema, who is an international journalist, as well as a news anchor and a media consultant, and Mr. Kinley Tshering, who's Bhutan's very renowned media personal figure, as well as the managing editor for Quintel, which is Bhutan's national news. In today's conversation with the two distinguished guests, I'm trying to understand more about their experiences in the field of media, journalism, and also their understanding of how the role of media is going about in the past years as well as in the future as well. So yes, welcome to the podcast, Dr. Amrita and Mr. Kinley. So before we dive into the main topic of the role of media, I actually want to understand the personal experiences that have shaped you and that have brought you so far in your career. So Dr. Amrita, we could go with you first.
Thank you very much, Regita, for having me on your program. It's a pleasure to meet you and to be on your show. How did I get into the media? Most people say that, they know when they were in class 3, they wanted to be journalists. I have a good friend who did that. But I didn't ever want to be in the media. I had planned to go into academics. I studied in school, and then media was a hobby for me. Yeah, I joined the All India Radio's youth channel, and after school I would go there and do radio shows. I was a radio DJ, little documentaries, plays, interviews and things, and that was a little hobby I had to make a bit of money. And then I discovered I quite enjoyed what I did. But my main aim was to actually go into academics. I did a DPhil, a PhD in history at Oxford University, and then moved to Germany. Now, I wanted to join a university, but without knowing any German, it was difficult. So I thought, while I learn German, let me do a bit of work at Deutsche Welle, which is Germany's international broadcaster. So I joined their radio service based on the experience I had as a young student in Delhi at All India Radio. And I discovered that I quite began to enjoy it after a while. Initially, as people asked me, what do you do? And I said, I work as a journalist. And they would say, what do you mean you work as a journalist? You're not a journalist. And I said, no, of course not. I'm not a journalist. How do you think I was a journalist? I was ashamed to be a journalist. And then after 5 years, I discovered, actually, I love what I'm doing. And also because my research, while I was doing my DPhil, my PhD, was enabling me to analyze stuff. Because, journalists delve a lot into facts. But facts are something, but you need to analyze those facts. You need to see patterns emerge from events which take place. And my research work, had given me a very good tool to understand journalism, which then people described as the first draft of history. I beg your pardon, the first draft of journalism is the first draft of history, to put it like that. So that's when I reconciled myself that I actually liked what I was doing. I moved from radio to television. I went to India, worked there for 4 years. Then from India, I came to Germany, and they were converting and starting a new news and current affairs channel at Deutsche Welle. So I joined that as a part of their founding team as a news anchor. Then at one point, I got an opportunity to move to Australia as a news anchor and a reporter there. So I spent a few years there. Then I came back to Germany. I miss Germany a lot because I was very used to doing news as it happens. Because most people think that, journalists are auto cuties. They read from an auto cue. They have nice makeup. They have a nice hairstyle. They look cute, and they read from the auto cue. And my work in Germany was that actually we had to deal often with breaking news. And I loved that because breaking news means somebody's telling you in your ear, a plane's been hijacked, so many people are, and you have to react. You have to communicate that information to your viewers. And for me, I discovered I really enjoyed that. A, because I like news, I like communication, but B, and even more importantly, I really care about people. I really care about putting people at the heart of my profession. How does news affect them? Where do they stand? What are their concerns? Bring the concerns of ordinary citizens onto an international platform. And see where we can look for solutions, where you can analyze what aspects the government needs to know, the people need to know. So that became really a passion for me. And now I feel that I'm so glad I was in this really vibrant and wonderful profession where I could communicate with people and bring their interests to the forefront of the national and international agenda.
Wow. I mean, hearing you talk about your career, I'm so inspired by the fact that this was rather a very gradual, but at the same time, a very spontaneous career move for you. All this while, you ventured into so many fields: radio, TV journalism, news. But the fact that you've had so much of a deeper passion for it, and that really showcases in the way you talk about it. So it's so inspiring to hear you talk about your career. Thank you for sharing that. Mr. Kinley, how about you? If you could kindly share your experience.
Thank you, Rajita, for having me here on your show. My journey as a journalist really began in college, in my final years, when one of my lecturers, who was a former journalist, introduced a 60-hour class on journalism, and I signed up for it, and that's when I understood, that there's something that I would love to do. I was a literature student then, and then I really, decided, I think, towards the end of the final year that I really want to become a journalist. This is something that I want to become in life. So after my graduation, I was just waiting. I would have actually joined Kunsel then. Like it's almost 18 years back. But then there was no opening that time, and then. It was also a very critical time. I think a lot of political reforms were introduced by, His Majesty the Fourth King, 2006. The first private newspaper was going to be launched, and they were announcing, vacancies for young reporters. So that's the time I think, I grabbed that opportunity. I put in my application, went for the interview, and my mentor, the editor, who's the mentor now, just said, you come next day. So I started as a journalist the next day. Of course, I got trained basic journalism for 1 or 2 months. And then after that, I was out in the field, reporting news, mostly, traveling in rural areas and meeting people. Also a lot of coverage was on politics and democracy. Because 2006 to 2008, the 2 years, I think, was also a very critical space. We are a lot of tours were happening, especially His Majesty was traveling around the country, discussing, the draft constitution with the people. A lot of awareness being created, on the political transition to democracy. A lot of our initial, coverage, reporting was on ground reporting, especially on democracy, the political reforms happening. So it was really an exciting time, that time to be a young journalist traveling around the country, meeting people, writing the stories. And as Dr. Cheema said, people are at the heart of what we do. And I really enjoyed, interacting with people, telling their stories, bringing out their, issues and concerns, in a national, mainstream, newspaper. So it was really, really productive and fruitful and meaningful. Then I went for a master's in Delhi, did my master's in convergent journalism, which really opened my eyes again because I was doing web journalism, television, radio, photography, photojournalism. So it exposed me to a wide range of other skills set. But again, when I came back to Bhutan, I had to become take over the newspaper as managing editor of Bhutan Times. It was going through a rough time. A lot of senior people had left. And then I had to take the reins of the ship then as managing editor of Bhutan Times. I was very young. Very challenging, I think, to take that kind of leadership at such a young age. But then I think I managed. And over the years, I've worked in other private newspaper, Business Bhutan, twice. First as managing editor, and second again, I went back, to Business Bhutan as the chief editor, almost operating like as a chief executive officer also because there was no managing director. And so I was like doing both, taking both the leadership responsibilities there. Then for a while I gave up journalism, and then moved to also because that time a lot of challenges, a lot of media I think was going through a difficult time, especially because of financial crisis. I left journalism for a while, took a break, and then went into documentary production at a small firm called Zoom Out Production with my managing partner. So we were doing this basically audiovisual work. And then I went into filmmaking, writing screenplays with my partner and wife, who started Samu, Bhutan's first OTT platform. I'd committed 3 years, and then after the 3 years, I said like, okay, now I need to do my own stuff. She was my CEO, she was my boss, my wife, my partners. It was quite difficult after some time. That's when I then said like, okay, I'm done with Samu, I want to do something else. And that's when the opening here in Kunsel, Kunsel was also looking for somebody senior. A lot of people, they had lost a lot of people because they left, I think mostly to Australia, I think. The migration, that was happening. So that's when I joined Kunsil. It's been 3 months now, and this is, I think, one of the best comebacks for me.
Again, even your experience and your career highlights are very tremendous. And one sentiment that both of you have echoed is that you've kept people at the heart of what you do, that people are at the heart of journalism, of news and media. And I feel like in this conversation, when we talk about it, if we shift this to a broader perspective, just like how people are at the heart of news and media, media is at the heart of society, right? Media has a really big role in shaping society. So from your experiences as well, I'd like to understand, how do you think credible journalism and media can influence public discourse and the entirety of the democratic process in our countries, respectively?
That's a very important question that you've asked. What role does media play? And there's been so much of discussion these days because the role of media is changing so rapidly. Yeah? And I think one thing we all agree that a free media is essential for good governance as well as within a democratic system to uphold democracy.
Yeah.
And good governance it is our job as the media, I think, to speak what they say, truth to power. That, if a government is not performing well, or if an organization is not performing well, we as the media actually have an obligation of trying to expose what is not going right and how one could improve it. I think it is our vocation. That is what makes, I think, journalism such a powerful tool for democracy and for good governance. And what's been happening of late, though, Regita, and which is very unfortunate, that the media has often either overexposed its authority. They want to kind of, do a lot of negative coverage, or they are biased in favor of one political party or one political group or one corporation or something, that they are coming under a lot of scrutiny about whether the media is biased, whether the media is politically affiliated, whether they are neutral or not. Because in my perspective, it is really, really essential that media remains neutral. Our role is to actually bring both sides of the story, not just, expose what's going wrong, but also, if something is going wrong, also to get the perspective of the other side. Now, when I was the bureau chief for Deutsche Welle in Delhi, and, we have a fairly polarized atmosphere among journalists there to some extent. And I told all my reporters over there, and I was reporting myself, and they said, we want to cover this story, and it's very volatile, and can we cover it? I said, of course you can cover it. You must cover it. It's our job to cover it. But please don't come and bring me one side of the story. Unless you have both sides of the story, it won't go on air. Right? So I think we have huge responsibility, and especially in this age of, social media, and where we can so easily put things out. And with social media, often things get put out without an editorial filter. I'm a big fan of social media as a means of communication, because you can reach so many people, and you can reach so many people quickly. But the big danger is the lack of editorial filter. People can just talk any nonsense, right? Without any responsibility. So we have to deal with that challenge. But it doesn't mean that we get rid of social media, or we say, no, we have to put a ban on this, So I think that we need to be very aware that our profession is really important. It's also a tool of empowerment. And I know in Bhutan, for example, you're doing a lot of work. The Bhutan Media Foundation, recently did this year a workshop on women's empowerment. Then earlier you did something again in the rural areas, communication in the rural areas to, media literacy. That is so critical, because for people who are not exposed to different forms of media, and suddenly they're bombarded with stuff coming from everywhere. It is confusing, and also people get taken in sometimes, not because they're silly, but simply because they've not been exposed to it. You have to provide them with the tools to understand and process that information they're getting. And I know the Bhutan Media Foundation is doing a lot of work. The Friedrich Naumann Stiftung as well is doing a lot of work. They've had many workshops, webinars. And I think this is very important, I think, for every country, and especially new democracies, growing democracies, to provide people with the tools to actually, navigate this kind of really vibrant and fast-growing landscape of the media.
Yes. That is a really powerful take, especially this idea of free and neutral media indicating good governance and the need for that to uphold democracy. I definitely agree with that, Dr. Amrita. So thank you so much for that. Mr. Kinley, how about you in your experience, the role of media in Bhutan?
I think I would like to talk about the role of media, as when we started Kunsal especially, it started as a mouthpiece of the government, It was actually a mouthpiece of the government.
Yes.
It was a government gazette, a circular, a kind of a newspaper, like A4 size kind of a newspaper that they started. So actually it was a mouthpiece of the government. And for a long time, it was a mouthpiece of the government. In 1986, it was started in 65, and in 86, then the weekly newspaper, actually, then the tabloid size, I think, newspaper, was started. That is when the role of the newspaper, the media, and of course, Quintal is known to define, to have defined the role of media in Bhutan, as the pioneering, media house in Bhutan. So then it became from mouthpiece, of the government to watchdog of the government. This is the entire, I think, journey of Quintal as a newspaper, and also I think so many other newspapers and media organizations that have come. So for Quintal, this is what defines the journey as a mouth. It started as a mouthpiece, and now it's a watchdog of the government. And as a watchdog of the government, I think we have, the heavy burden of responsibility here, to be again neutral, to be objective, to be ethical, and to be courageous again, to be able to question, government, hold the government accountable, to make the government, transparent.
Yes.
In this democratic framework, again, this is a role that I think we are playing. But also, again, there is other important role, to promote democracy,
Yes.
public discourse, and also we do a lot of criticisms on public policies, again, government policies. So, how do we, how the role of media in shaping, public policies also, I think, very critical. So this is a wide range of, I think, roles. I think Bhutanese media continue to play in both, before, how it happened, and now in the context of democracy.